Hi, Dean, and welcome to this conversation. And thank you so very much for making your work available on Tactile Visions Woven. It is always such a pleasure to engage you and your work. And so it is a real honor to have your work on the exhibition.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
So can you introduce yourself to an audience who might not know you and your work?
Well, I don't know. I'm known at very many things, and I've done many different things throughout my lifetime of creation. From starting at a young, bright, confident photojournalist, I shifted into more visual art making and performance in the last 10 years. And I'm genderqueer, non-binary, trans identity, which is very much a part of my my art making, creative impetus about making work around difference and the celebration of difference, and looking at radical ways of shifting violent spaces into ones that are more welcoming and caring of bodies like mine, and bodies of Black people and women, and across many different binaries of identity. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Can you speak specifically to the work that is on Tactile Visions Woven?
So I presented some large-scale light inflatables that Spear invited me to present at the Spear Light Art Festival. I was very lucky. At work I've been trying to produce for a while, but I needed production funding. It was really fantastic to be able to make something that I'd been drawing and trying to make in my mind for about 2 years already. Kind of just after, about 3 years ago, I did a very radical art intervention around trying to disrupt whiteness. And I received a huge amount of hate, some like very quiet love and personal love from people, but a lot of very public and very loud hate from white supremacists. To a stage where I received a lot of death threats and threats to my body, which really affected my body. So my body I've always been a very strong, tough, capable, athletic person, and my body like took a lot of hits like with regard to that. And I, through my performing of the Golden Dean avatar as a teacher and as a queer body, I became like soft and vulnerable. And as much as all of these very kind of psychically, emotionally violent things that happened to me, I discovered that I survived it. And you know, there is something. There was something in me after that like terrible violence that I experienced that wanted to show the magicness of softness, of soft bodies, and spaces of comfort in a very uncomfortable world that is prickly and scarring, and but there still is like real power in reclaiming that gentleness. So it was just, yeah, it was just it was a way of, in a certain case, kind of retreating from a hypervisible body, it's just something that I had to kind of like really ground myself into, and like in doing like other like involving myself in many other different philosophies of care, um, around reading certain works like Bell Hooks, All About Love, which really like focuses, refocus the attention of of radical, in particular Black women in finding space to return to love, um, despite the efforts of overwhelming world that seeks to destroy you. Yeah, a bit long-winded.
No, it's fantastic. Because sometimes it's so easy to forget that white heteronormativity is actually such a very small paradigm, and it's very, it's like a very small maze running that only a very few can fit into. And so your work, your work is truly inspirational in terms of body positivity, white transgressivity, gender non-binary, and these works for me, in in both their monumentality and in terms of the anti-monumentality as well. I love all of your work. The Golden Dean series, the Fuck White People, but and one can one can't really understand the full scope of the levels of violence that you have gone through and that you continue to go through. And you, for instance, probably have some level of insight into the levels of violence that people of color go through on a daily basis, in terms of South Africa and in the world at large. And then to come out of that with these kinds of works that are so soft and caring, and works like Breathable and Huggable, for me are quite moving.
Yeah.
To take that violence, those levels of such extreme violence, and channel that into monuments of love and care. It is in itself what I think radical love speaks about, because that's what we do often as women and as people of color. Very often is that we're constantly doing that. When we talk about Black girl magic and all of that, is that we're constantly taking those levels of violence and hate that is directed towards us on a daily basis, and we're creating greatness and beauty and love. And so can you speak about the kinds of the choices of materialities, that you chose us for this monumental acts of love that you produced for us?
So the things like with regards to the materiality, I wanted something that was both strong but also had give. And like one of the things around healing and being mindful is the breath. So to have the constant, the air pressure that's created through the blower, to have that. And also, I had awesome amounts of fun on jumping castles, and a lot of my work kind of nobody often picks up about it, but it really goes really back to childhood and experiences of childhood play, because I feel that's what my work has done is it's allowed me to travel in some ways in my body, in the temporality of my body, and allowed me to have those experiences that I missed growing up. Growing up as a white child in apartheid, in a poor white family that didn't give a fuck about me, you know. It's like there was nothing superior in the whiteness that I experienced, and particularly in the violence of white women. And to go back and to make these works, which are quite vulnerable, actually. You can't jump on it like a jumping castle, but you can lean into it, and you can feel the air and the reminder, the pushing, the pressure, the weightedness of comfort that happens, but it's not something that's hard hitting against. I love that, you know, Spear were very worried about these things being damaged. They had to be up for like 30 nights or something like that in the summer in Cape Town, and like people would be like roaming around, not being like complete. The work didn't have somebody stationed out there, and what I love doing is placing works that are not they're not perfectly invulnerable to damage, that ask the audience to look after it in certain respects. And I kept receiving things like Spear put up like a lot of signs saying, "Don't touch," like in many different ways, which I actually found eventually was like, the work is not that fragile, and the work is about a certain vulnerability, and the work, every time I kept, like, people would put pictures on social media, people touching it, and I loved it. But it's also like it's that refusal to like follow the rules of the exhibition space. Mm-hmm. That I love my work to do that kind of thing, to encourage people to disobey, but in loving ways. There's very many ways of breaking rules that don't need as much like kind of permanently like holding guards. Like we can do a little bit, like we can have less guards in our change. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what it's about. The works are the first generation of work in this way that I want to make. I have very many different materials with which I want to make these works, in very many different styles, and you know, so I'm really looking for investors and Imagineers and futurists to come and work with me in making things that I really wish I had a whole warehouse full for when quarantine hit. Because I know that the object would have shifted the idea of quarantine for many people. But it's never too late. Doubt it's going to be the last pandemic. We have a pandemic of lovelessness already existing. So yeah. So there's so many different ways that I want to manifest these works. But when you're a like like working class artist, then yeah, they challenging to making bigger work sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, I think in South Africa we're always so limited by having sort of patrons and institutional patrons to fund us and the kind of large scale ideas that is possible in the ways that one finds in Europe, in the US, and in Asia, and the kinds of possibilities that artists are allowed. Um, you know, I was invited for the Turbine Art Fair for another exhibition as an artist, and because it's online, I decided to stage my own artwork, which required about 20 of these of these TVs, which is almost impossible to get these Sony TVs. In you can get them in institutions in other parts of the world, but so it's very techie intensive. But then I got a friend to then build a 3D staging of it, and suddenly, like, I think for the first time, like when she did it, she wasn't sure she could do it, but when Kati did it, and I saw that what she did, because she built a whole 3D gallery for me with all of these TVs and projections, and I woke up the next morning after viewing this, like with entirely different scenarios in my head and possibilities. And suddenly I was not limited to a gallery and to money and everything. And I was like, my God, for like 10, 15,000, I can build all of my art. So it's like, oh my God, this is like, I'm entering a new stage in my thinking, in my possibilities.
So think about that, your like the visual virtual landscape, and add my soft object together to see where I want to go.
I know, right?
There's a world that is coming, that is shifted, and like I think one of the thing about quarantine has been that it's really pulled off the band-aids that real life and the internet are different things. You know, it's really like also the possibilities of relationships online. It really shifted the way in which I think that we connect. And yes, like I've been building on Adobe Dimension. I've been building my own 3D maquette of things that I want to make, and just like the beautiful thing about like, and then like adding texture and all of the stuff, and this is the world that is coming. Yeah, you know, and once we are able to start like really manufacturing cheaper haptic interfaces, you know, all of these things I think that keep me up late at night, imagining, you know.
At the same time, I mean, and we're looking at it as artists, as creatives, of all the possibilities, right? And as scholars, we're always interested as well in these are the conversations Kati has as well about all of the democratic possibilities that the internet always allows, which is even during COVID right now under incredible attack by capitalists, right? but and of course you've also felt the other dimension about this, right, where the anonymity of the internet has allowed misogynistic violence to an nth degree. And it, you know, where the internet just allows male violence in unmitigated ways.
Absolutely. You know, I had to get to a point where I had to understand that I cannot have any kind of engagement in any way with some anonymous person on the internet with 5 followers. I could not allow some fake ass, coward, scared, pathetic, violent, typically white or white adjacent man to interrupt not just my emotional life, but my professional life. My professional life had been and always has been about finding the curated methods of destroying whiteness. You know, it truly is a cancer of the world, and so just understanding how scared whiteness is running right now. This is why we're seeing this like kind of completely abject implosion of whiteness through the memeing of the Karen encounter. It's, you know, I'm subscribed to about 3 different like Karen insane kind of accounts. And it's terrible because it's like I really have real PTSD of, you know, growing up with people like that, and then like they would like do that in shops or whatever, or in places, and like asserting power. That's and but the important thing is that the way that it has become so visible, and the way that these people cannot hide their hatred. You know, and the fact that people behave this way when people request the right to love in the way in which they want to love, whether it's with regard to the love of family or to a non-traditional or a diverse kind of love. And the fact that people can behave so violently for such a simple human need is, yeah, it's dangerous, and it's psychotic, and there must be some kind of treatment. But before the treatment, you have to acknowledge what it is. You know, and not to say that racism is an illness, but it is a psychosis.
And it is, as you say, you know, it's the dying kicks of white supremacy across the world, and it might seem very virulent right now, but it really is under severe attack, as is heteronormativity across the world. So which is why it's acting up in the ways that it is. And I would really like to thank you very much for your courage and for your work, and for taking the stands that you do, and for making available the work for Tactile Visions, and for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Sharlene, but also like you must remember, and I try and tell you as much as possible, that it's like directly through the influence of work like your very brave acts in the early 2000s of calling out white women in the art industry was really, really inspirational, and I saw the violence that came at you, and that still comes at you through acts like this. But yeah, um,
Thank you
yeah,
very much, Dean.
I'm proud to I'm proud to be a comrade.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And we are comrades in creativity,
yeah,
over and above everything else.
yeah.
So it's absolutely wonderful to engage you in intellectual and creative work in this way.
Thank you so much, Hutton. Thank you.
Thank you.